Hello, my name is Matthias and welcome to the FPL Scope and the weekly wildcard draft for Game Week 27. And I'm actually pretty excited for this edition of the weekly wildcard draft series because I actually think this tactic with wildcard in Game Week 27, bench boosting in 28 and free hitting in 34 might be the way I go myself. Even though for now I've been pretty staunch supporter of the free hit 29 sort of tactic, I think it's still a viable tactic, especially for my team. It depends how your team is set up, obviously. But I think this tactic is pretty damn enticing, and I'm going to talk a little bit about why I think that. And also, I'm going to, as always, with this series, I'm going to present all the 15 players that I think are the most important players to have if you're wildcarding this week. So I'm going to talk about all of those guys, and as always, I'm going to do it in order of most important player first and least important player at the number 15 spot, basically, in the draft. So yeah, at the end, I'm going to go through the future game weeks with this draft as well on the FPL.team website, so stick around for that. But for now, let's just go through the players and then we'll talk more about the strategies overall at the end of the video. So number one pick this week is actually Cole Palmer. He's moved up from number 8 last week, and that's basically down to the fact that he didn't have a game week or didn't have a game in Game Week 26. Now he's back in Game Week 27, ready to play. He doesn't play in Game Week 29, which obviously is a drawback, especially with this draft where I'm not free hitting in 29. But both before and after 29, he's just too damn good and so cheap and everything in place for him to be a really important player to have in FPL currently. The most important player, I'd say, potentially. There's a couple other candidates that I'll talk about pretty soon. But Palmer, been amazing all season on penalties. Even without penalties, he's amazing for Chelsea. Chelsea are a bit up and down, but they have really good fixtures. And I think they're actually sort of turning into a better team now, potentially. You would expect them to be better and better with still a pretty new manager in Pochettino. So Palmer has just been amazing. The best value player in the game, probably, apart from maybe Watkins this season. So I think he is a pretty damn good player to have in your FPL team currently, and that's why he's number one with actually a fixture now in the upcoming game week, which was not the case last game week. Number 2, we have Heung-min Son, who's also arguably potentially the best player to have currently in FPL, especially if the news about Richarlison being injured is true, because if that's true, then Son will play up front rather than on the wing, and I think it's much more suited to that. So or I think he'll be a much better player in FPL because of that. But even if Richarlison is not injured, I still think Son is a really, really, really good pick. Potentially even the second best player in the game currently. He has a fixture in Game Week 26. He has a fixture in Game Week 27, I should say, not in 26. He has a fixture in Game Week 27. He has a fixture in Game Week 29. And he's just, has really good fixtures in general, both before and after 29 as well. So Son, really good player to have. Obviously, would have been a much more difficult player to have last game week when he didn't have a game week or didn't have a game in Game 26. But now for the foreseeable future, he looks like a pretty important player to have because Spurs are going to have a lot of doubles. They're not going to blank in 29. They're basically really well set up now, Spurs. They have more matches than most teams, and that's why Son is probably the most important player from them as well, because he is their focal point, their star man, and most likely on pens still as well. So yeah, Son is just a fantastic pick as well. Number 3, Ollie Watkins. I did mention him earlier. He has slightly more difficult fixtures from Game 31 onwards, but with this tactic, we're actually looking to sell him and bring back Haaland into the squad in Game 31. So that's the tactic for this team. But for now, at least, with Game 29 in mind, without a free hit in Game 29, he is pretty much essential. He's just been amazing this season. Like I said, might be the highest value player this season, apart from Palmer. And yeah, really good fixtures. You don't really need to talk that much about Watkins. He's been a mainstay in the team for a long time now, and lately he's been producing a lot of points as well, with Aston Villa being super good offensively as well. So yeah, Watkins is a pretty easy pick as well. Obviously, he's more of a short-term pick because you don't really like the fixtures he has from Game 31 onwards. No double game weeks and that type of stuff either. So he's more of a short-term pick, but still, for that short term, he is absolutely amazing, and I think he is someone that should be in everyone's squad currently, whether you're free hitting in 29 or not, basically. So yeah, Watkins fixed it in as number 3. Number 4, we have Dominic Solanke. Once again, he is the standard option for captaincy in Game Week 28. Should have a little bit of a caution sign here with Solanke. He might be injured. He had a knee issue that kept him out of the FA Cup game now, but apparently he was close to making the bench, so I don't think he's going to be out for too long. Maybe he misses the Burnley fixture, but I think the double game week is going to be fine for Solanke. I think he's going to be fine for those 2 matches, and that's really when you want to have Solanke as a captain for Sheffield United at home and Luton at home. He's the standout option by far as a captaincy choice in Game Week 28, and I think he's going to be fit to play those games. So The other good thing about Solanke is the fact that both before and after Game 29, which he does blank, which is a downside, before and after Game 29, he has tremendous fixtures. You can see the fixtures before 29 here: Burnley away, Sheffield United and Luton at home. But after that, he has Everton at home. He has a couple other really nice home fixtures. Bournemouth in general have really good fixtures, and they also have a double game week in 37 most likely. So Solanke is just a really nice long-term pick as well, and good short-term pick if he's not injured. You basically have to mention the fact that he is potentially injured, but the news as of this recording is the fact that he's probably just like slightly injured and probably back pretty soon. So he makes it into the team as well as number 4. Number 5, we have Bukayo Saka, yet another player who blanks in Game 29. So seeing as I said that I would not be free hitting with this squad in Game 29, we already have 3 players for the bench, and there's going to be a couple more as well. I'm going to talk a little bit more about Game Week 29 towards the end of the video, but yeah, there's a good reason for it though to have Saka, because he's just absolutely amazing. Sheffield United away, brilliant fixture for him. He has really good fixtures before Game 29. After 29, he has Man City in Game Week 30, but then 31 onwards, he has pretty good fixtures again after that. But Saka is just the most outstanding player in FPL currently, so you sort of have to have him in your team if you're wildcarding now. He's worth it for the next 2 game weeks at least. Maybe you want to sell him in Game Week 29 and bring in someone else and potentially go without Saka for more of the latter half of the season, but I think he is just too good currently this season to drop out of your team, so he makes it in as number 5. Number 6, Gabriel Magalhaes, his teammate at Arsenal. He's been the best defender in the game basically lately, scoring goals offensively, keeping clean sheets defensively. Arsenal are just so amazing when it comes to their underlying numbers, especially I think they have like 16 point something expected goals the last 6 game weeks and like 1.88 expected goals conceded the last 6 game weeks. So Arsenal are just absolutely flying. They're absolutely fantastic. So even though they blank in 29 and they most likely don't double in 34 either, they most likely double in 37. I still think Arsenal players are really important to have, especially seeing how good Saka and Gabriel have been lately. I just can't drop them basically. So Gabriel, another player who blanks in 29. It's not looking good for Game 29 now, which is the big drawback of this tactic. But yeah, we'll get there eventually and talk more about it. Next up, we have Maddison from Spurs. He does play in Game 29, which is a huge boost, obviously. I think Richarlison, if he's not injured, is probably slightly better than Maddison, potentially. He's a bit cheaper, but the price doesn't really matter that much here because I'm going to sell Maddison to make way for Haaland eventually in this draft. But for the short term, obviously with Game 29 in mind, Maddison is amazing. Crystal Palace at home as soon as Game Week 27, really, really good for that game week. Fulham away in the blank game week in Game Week 29, that's really good. Game Week 30 plays against Luton at home. That's also a really good fixture to have him as well. Aston Villa away is not even that difficult, and that's also where, he's going to come in handy as well, as we're going to see with at the end of the video, where I'll talk about the future game weeks in particular. But yeah, Maddison, a really good player. He's back from injury. He's played a couple weeks now, a couple months even. I can't even remember when he came back, but he's looking really good. Potentially getting, currently he's on set pieces with Poro being out with an injury as well. We don't know how long Poro is out with injuries for either. So Maddison on set pieces and just being the focal point and the main man supplying the passes for Son also seems like a really good pick currently. So yeah, number 7 for Maddison. Could be Richarlison if Richarlison is fit to play and he's playing as a striker. I think he's still a really good option, but Maddison is more secure in the team anyways, even without injury. So I think Maddison, especially with this team where we don't really need to worry about the money that much, he is probably the better pick than Richarlison, even if Richarlison is not injured. But yeah, we'll see about the Richarlison injury news. It was FPL Focal and FPL Raptor have talked about it on Twitter, at least. I haven't really seen the other rumors other than that. So yeah, I don't know. But Maddison is still an equally as good pick as Richarlison, especially for this tactic, I think. Then number 8, we have Erling Haaland, yet another player who blanks in game week 29. But like I said, like I mentioned a couple of times, we want to bring Haaland back in for game week 20 or game week 31. So that means we're going to sell him for game week 29, most likely. But for the immediate future, Man United at home, I think he's the best captaincy option still in this game week. But there is an argument to go without Haaland entirely from this point on. Maybe go with someone like Tony instead, who plays okay matches in the next 2 game weeks and then has a really good game week 29 fixture rather than Haaland. And then we can get back to Haaland eventually in a different way. But I think Haaland is still the best captaincy choice for this game week. It's either him or Son, in my opinion. Maybe Saka. He's also a decent captaincy shout, but I think Haaland, especially after those 5 goals against Luton, it just feels really dangerous to go without Haaland for this immediate game week against Man United, where he tends to score a lot of goals. He scored against every single opposition he's had in the Premier League, but I think Man United is his favorite. I think he has like 5 goals or something, maybe even 6 goals against Man United throughout his 2 seasons in the Premier League. So yeah, Haaland is the best captaincy choice for this upcoming game week, I think, and that's why he's in the draft basically. But he is also someone that I'm looking to sell in Game 29 with this draft in mind, so keep that in mind as well. Number 9, we have Neto in goal. Yet another player who blanks in 29, but we're going to have a backup goalkeeper that plays in 29, so don't worry too much about that. The most important thing about Neto is the fact that he has 2 amazing game weeks coming up. Burnley away in this upcoming game week, Sheffield United and Luton at home in the game week after that, in game week 28. That's absolutely fantastic for Neto. And he's also obviously someone you can easily just hide on your bench with your second goalkeeper, who you can rotate in and out. That's much easier than having like a defender from Bournemouth, even though that's coming up as well, a defender from Bournemouth. It's really easy to have a goalkeeper that blanks in certain game weeks if you just have the other goalkeeper to fill in those gaps in those game weeks where he doesn't play. So Neto, amazing value for the immediate future. Like I mentioned with Solanke as well, really good fixtures from game 30 onwards as well, and also a potential double in 37 most likely. So Neto is looking absolutely fantastic for the foreseeable future. I think he's the best goalkeeper in the game currently, and that's why he's the first goalkeeper on this draft board, as you can see, as the number 9 pick. Number 10, we have another Bournemouth defender, like I mentioned, Senesi, and I did mention at the start of the video, it's not a spoiler anymore, that I'm going to bench boost in Game 28 with this tactic, and that's why Senesi is so nice to have. Obviously, Senesi, the one big drawback with him, and why you might want to go with someone like Kirkis or Sabarni, for example, instead, is the fact that Senesi has 8 yellow cards. So if he gets 10 yellow cards, he's going to be suspended for 2 matches, which is not ideal, obviously. But for the next 3 game weeks, or the next 3 matches in the next 2 game weeks, it's looking very unlikely that he's going to pick up 2 yellow cards in the matches against Burnley and Sheffield United, and then not playing against Luton. So I think he's playing in all those 3 matches. He's nailed on. He's a really good goal threat offensively for Bournemouth. I think he's just better long-term and short-term than Sabarni. Maybe he gets suspended for maybe he gets his 10th yellow card against Luton, and he has to be suspended for Everton and then the fixture after that, which is not really like the worst thing either, because we're going to have decent defenders apart from that. So, and even I think still not fully, like, I'm not 100% sure about this, but I think after game 32 the thing resets and you have to go to 15 yellow cards to get suspension after that. So I think it's not even that big of a window for the suspension to hit in for Senesi, if it even happens. So yeah, we'll see about that. But I think Senesi for the next 2 game weeks is just too important to have, rather than Sabarni or Kirkis, who are more uneven picks. Maybe if there's a long-term injury to Lloyd Kelly at left back and Kirkis is looking like the left back for the foreseeable future, maybe he's better than Senesi, but I think Senesi has just been the best Bournemouth defender to have this season, and I'm not going to get too scared about the potential suspensions, especially for the next 2 game weeks. So yeah, Senesi basically is the number 10 pick for that reason. Number 11, Alfie Doughty. He is a more certain player than Senesi, I guess, but he doesn't have the same good fixtures in the next 2 game weeks, so that's why I sort of have him slightly below Senesi. The upside to Doughty is the fact that he has even more goal threat, or assist threat at least, point threat than Senesi going forward. Even though Senesi is better going like backward, I guess. Defensively, he's better. But Doughty has a double game week in 28 where we're looking to bench boost. He has a game in game 29 where we're looking to not free hit. So that means that Doughty is a pretty nice player to have. He does have poor fixtures before and after those game weeks though, which is kind of why I'm sort of more down on him. I've also had him in my own team in FPL personally and had 2 blanks. I had him in the double game week where he got like 2 points in total. Had him in the game week before that against Sheffield United where he blanked in that game as well. So maybe I'm a little bit too down on Doughty, but I think he is a pretty important player to have if you're looking to bench boost in 28 especially, and also without the free hit in 29. So he comes into the team for that reason. He is good offensively. He is vital to what Luton do offensively, but Luton have also been pretty poor lately. But yeah, it's a nice, decent upside pick for bench boost 28 and not free hitting in 29 in mind especially. So he makes it into the team as well, even though I sold him last week personally in my own team. Number 12, we have Destiny Udogie from Spurs. You have to triple up on Spurs because they have both really good fixtures before and after 29, and they play in 29, and they have potentially 2 double game weeks in 36 and 37 as well. So yeah, Spurs, tripling up on Spurs seems like a really nice deal for me. You could argue to go with Pedro Porro rather than Udogie, but there's 2 different things there. One of the things is the fact that, well, both of them have been injured, but Udogie is looking to be fit to play now in game 27, it looks like, most likely. If he's not fit to play, maybe you downgrade him to someone like Van de Ven. Maybe you need to do that regardless because you don't have enough money. But Udogie just offers more offensively than the centre backs for Spurs. And I think he offers pretty much almost the same as Pedro Porro offensively, if not even better offensively than Pedro Porro. I think Porro has been like the golden child of FPL content creators, me included in some weeks at least. But I think Udogie he's $1 million cheaper, which is the biggest selling point for him. It leaves you with a lot more spending room when it comes to players for game week 30 onwards. And I think he's offensively almost as good as Pedro Porro, and defensively, obviously, they have the same probability of keeping a clean sheet. So I think Udogie is just a better pick than Pedro Porro, especially with the injury now in game week 27 in mind, where we need Udogie to play as well, because you don't want to play Alfie Doughty, for example, this game week. So Udogie, I think, is a really good pick. He was one of my favorite picks before the start of the season. And I kind of regret ever selling him, but now he's back in the team if I do this tactic myself, which I very well might do. So that's 12 picks, and we have 3 picks to go, and there's actually still another team we haven't tripled up on that we are going to triple up on, and that's the next 3 players actually, just with the bench boost in 28 and free hit, or not free hit in 29 in mind. We're going to have these 3 players. So let's start with the first one. It is Jared Bowen. He had that massive hat-trick 20-point haul this past game week. Should have been my transfer in rather than Huang, but again, that's hindsight. A lot of people probably thinking the same thing. But now with Paquetá back in the side for West Ham, Jared Bowen is looking like a new player, obviously scoring a hat-trick last game week. Burnley at home in game week 28. Aston Villa at home in game week 29 as well. Not the worst fixture. I think that's a decent potential fixture for West Ham as well. And yeah, Bowen is just, for the immediate future, is really, really good. He's the one that I would sell for Salah in game week 30 as well with this tactic. So yeah, the game week 30 onwards doesn't really matter too much with West Ham and Bowen, or especially Bowen for his price. And he's actually a nice like holdover guy who's closer to Salah in price than someone like Douglas Luiz or Bailey, for example. You could go with someone like that instead. The downside to that is the fact that they don't have the best fixture. They play Spurs in game week 28, and I also think playing away from home, especially Douglas Luiz, who's been terrible away from home. He's been fantastic at home and terrible away from home, and now they have basically 2 out of the next 3 fixtures are away from home for Aston Villa. So I prefer Bowen in this instance, especially with the Burnley game in mind and having the bench boost in 28. I think he looks really good for that game week, and he just looks amazing. He has 14 goals so far this season in the Premier League. He's been a popular FPL asset earlier in the season when West Ham have been in good form, and now with Paquetá back, West Ham are looking much better. Also with Mavropanos as a centre back as well, West Ham are looking much better. So Bowen is looking like a nice pick, especially with this tactic in mind, with a bench boost in 28 and not free hitting in 29. Next up, another West Ham player. It is, it is Emerson, who's number 14. I made a wrong thing with the graphic there, but Emerson and Areola doubling up on the West Ham defense for the bench boost in game week 28, and also having them for the Aston Villa fixture in game week 29 as well. Both those guys, maybe not the best defensively, but they do have upside. Emerson, as you saw now last game against Brentford, he can provide both assists and goals offensively. He's actually a pretty attacking fullback, especially when he plays with Paquetá, who have a nice connection from their Lyon days. So I really like Emerson, especially against that Burnley fixture. Areola, you could go with Kaminsky in this position as well. That's why he's number 15, because Kaminsky has obviously a double game week in 28, and he plays a better fixture than Areola in game 29. So maybe you want to go with Kaminsky. But the reason why I've gone with Areola is the fact that I don't want to switch my goalkeepers throughout the end of the season. I just want to have Areola for the entirety of the season after we're finished with 28 and 29. And that's where the money comes in handy as well. It's only like 0.3, so maybe you want to go with Kaminsky instead. That's why I'm a bit unsure about Areola, but either way, I think he has a really good chance against Burnley to get a clean sheet. The good thing about West Ham as well is the fact that, yes, they do concede a lot of shots on target, but that also gives Areola a chance to have a lot of saves. So you could potentially be really lucky and have like 9 saves and a clean sheet on top of that and get the bonus points, the clean sheet points, the save points, the whole shebang, maybe even a penalty save if you're really lucky. But yeah, I also quite like Areola for that, for especially for the long-term future, with him just being really cheap and someone you can depend on to be the starting goalkeeper for West Ham for the entirety of the season, basically, unless he gets injured, but that's not really that likely. So quite like Areola and Emerson as well. Not super high on them. You could go with Luton players instead for the double in 28 and then the game week 29 fixture. But I do prefer West Ham's upside compared to Luton currently, because I think Luton are looking pretty bad, and West Ham maybe turned a new leaf with Paquetá coming back last game week. So that's basically it for the 15 players in the squad. I didn't mention I'm going to go through the future game weeks and see how I'm going to navigate the bench boost, and also having a really good team from game week 30 onwards. But before we do that, we also have to talk about the players that have dropped out since last game week. So you can just, you can see Areola, Udogie, Emerson, Madison, Bowen, and Son are new players from last game week. That's 6 players. That means 6 players have dropped out as well. So let's take a look at who those 6 players are. Foden has dropped out, and that's kind of like a downside to this draft. I really like Foden against Man United, but after that, like I've mentioned with Haaland, not the best fixtures, and Foden is just someone that I don't think is quite as important to have as these other 5 midfielders that I have currently, plus Salah for Bowen in game week 30 onwards. I think Salah, Madison, Saka, Son, Palmer from game week 30 onwards just seems like a really, really good midfield, and Foden just has to drop out, sadly. Foden has been amazing lately. He is one of the biggest reasons why I still want to keep on with the tactic that I do have. But some good players have to be dropped to fit in this team, basically. So Foden has to drop out. Hwang, had high hopes for him for game week 26, like many others. I do still have decent hopes for him in the future if he's not injured long term. I might even keep him if I'm not wildcarding myself this week for the long term, because I think Wolves have pretty good fixtures both before and after game week 29 if you're looking to free hit in 29. But with this draft in mind, where he's both injured immediately, we don't know for how long yet either, and also we're not going to free it in 29, and we need all of the 29 players that we can get. Hwang just doesn't make sense at all, so yeah, he's an easy sell basically. Ødegaard, sort of the same. Arsenal don't look as enticing going forward now as they did before the FA Cup results and FA Cup draw, because now they're most likely not getting a double game week in 34 and they're getting a double game week in 37 instead, so that's far into the future. And like I said, I really like this midfield for this tactic, so Ødegaard has to drop out. Defensively, Branthwaite and Ait-Nouri, you can't be too mad at me if you did the wildcard draft from last week and you followed my exact formula, because you would have had Branthwaite's 9 points, you would have had Ait-Nouri's 12 points, you would have had Johnston's clean sheet points. So yeah, those 3 players that have dropped out as the 13th, 14th, and 15th pick. It's basically just down to the tactic. If you are still looking to free hit in 29 and you're not wildcarding now, you're saving your wildcard for 35, I think Branthwaite, Ait-Nouri, and Johnston are 3 amazing picks going forward. But with this tactic, they're not quite as good, because yeah, we need players to play in 29, and we also have a free hit in 34, which is where those guys, especially Branthwaite and Johnston, who are looking decently likely to get a double game in 34, those guys are more sort of made for that tactic of free hitting in 29 and having players for 34 that you need. So they drop out as well to make way for Udogie and Emerson, who are better with this current tactic and this current setup. So yeah, that's basically all the players that have dropped out from this game week. And then the final thing on the agenda for this video now is looking for the future game weeks and seeing how this all adds up for the future game weeks. And as always, we're going to use FPL.team, which is a fantastic site where you can get the predicted fixtures, or the projected fixtures, I should say, because there are pretty strong indications of what we're going to get for the fixtures throughout the season now. Obviously, it depends on the results in the FA Cup and what's going to happen in FA Cup results, which is going to happen in game 29. That will affect the double game weeks in 34 and 37. But we do have a decent idea of, for example, Wolves beating Coventry seems likely. Man City beating Newcastle seems quite likely. Liverpool beating Man United seems quite likely. And Chelsea beating Leicester seems quite likely as well. I think at least one of those results will probably go the other way. But yeah, we have a pretty good picture of what's going to happen in the future at least. So that's why I think this tactic is actually pretty good, as you'll see. So immediately for this game week, a really good team to have. Obviously, if Sonk is fit to play, you play him rather than Bowen. But if he's not fit to play, that's still really good, because you still have a fantastic set of players here for this game week. Defensively as well, Gabriel against Sheffield United away, Neto against Burnley away, Senesi against Burnley away, Udogie against Crystal Palace at home. A really, really good Game Week 27 team, even though this is set up with future game weeks in mind. We have the immediate gains of having triple Spurs, which I don't have currently in my own team, for example. Palmer, who I don't have in my own team currently because I sold him to make way for players because I thought I was going to wildcard in 29, or potentially, or not wildcard in 29, free hit in 29, or potentially wildcard in 27, like I'm proposing right now. So this team is really good. We still have the best captaincy choice in Holland. Obviously, like I mentioned, you could go with Tony instead and captain Son if you feel better about Son captaincy wise. But I think Holland is the best captaincy choice, and that's why he's still in the team basically. Game 28, we can deal with this without any transfers. Again, a really strong team. We have Solanke for the double game week, Senesi double game week, Neto double game week, Doughty double game week as well. You could potentially have Emerson and Areola, because we're bench boosting, as you can see from the really nice graphic here. We're bench boosting this week. So you could have double game weeks for both Kaminski and potentially another Luton defender here as well. But I don't really think Crystal Palace away and Bournemouth away is that good of a set of fixtures compared to Burnley at home. And also for the future, like I said, I think Emerson and Areola are better to have on the bench for game weeks 30 onwards than the Luton players. So yeah, that's why I prefer that tactic. But yeah, no transfers in game week 28 with this tactic, and we still have 4 double game week players. Solanke as captain, still have a really strong midfield. Bowen against Burnley at home, also really nice. And we have the nice bench boost as well. Areola against Burnley at home, Emerson against Burnley at home, and then Spurs players in Madison and Udogie against Aston Villa away. So I guess this tactic comes down to how good you feel about game week 28 bench boost compared to game week 37 bench boost. And yes, there are no double game week fixtures here in this bench boost. Maybe if you have Kaminski rather than Areola, you'll have at least one double game week player on the bench boost. But the upside to bench boosting in 28 and wildcarding in 27 is the fact that you can actually know pretty exactly who's going to play and who's not going to play. That's the big drawback to bench boosting in 37 in my mind. It's the fact that it's so far away into the future, and it also sort of hamstrings your team as well in terms of like having to always think about who's going to play in 37. You can't swap in players that are not going to play in 37 because you need all the players that you can have for the bench boost in 37. I think the bench boost chip, honestly, is quite a pain in the ass, and I quite like to just get it away, get rid of it immediately. Obviously, this is easier if you're wildcarding in 35, like I'm currently looking to do. If you're free hitting in 29 and wildcarding in 35, then you could definitely have a much better bench boost for 37 than I would in this instance if you're wildcarding this week. But seeing as this is the weekly wildcard draft, and we are, if you've come to this video, you're most likely looking to potentially wildcard this week, or maybe I've changed your mind as well and you are now looking to wildcard after listening to this video. But especially if you're wildcarding this week because your team is looking terrible for game 27, then I think this is the better tactic. You have the confirmed fixtures in game 28 where you know exactly who's going to play, you know exactly how the team's going to look, and you don't have to worry about bench boost all the way into the future where you have to basically have your whole squad of 15 players available for game 37 when you can just have 11 players available for game 37 in this draft, for example, where you basically just need to worry about 11 to 13 players rather than 15 players for game 37, if that makes any sense. So I think this bench boost is pretty good, but obviously predicated on how good you feel about West Ham against Burnley in terms of their clean sheet potential chances, and also how you feel about Spurs' fixture against Aston Villa away. That might be a tough fixture for them. Maybe you think both of these guys will blank, or all 4 of these guys will blank, then maybe you don't want to do this tactic. This is especially for those of you guys who still have the option to not wildcard in game 27 because you have a pretty good team in game 27. But yeah, I think it's a pretty strong bench boost in general. Pretty strong starting 11 on top of the bench boost, obviously, which is also a really nice feature. So I think that's a pretty good game week for, in general, you're going to get a lot of points immediately, basically, from game 28, rather than waiting for 37 and the bench boost in that game week. Game 29, I mentioned that this is sort of a tough game week to handle. We have made one transfer in this instance, and that is getting Avoni in for Haaland. Could go with Tony rather than Avoni, but I think Avoni is someone that I want to keep long term because he's a bit cheaper. Tony is a bit more expensive, and with this draft, and as you'll see in the future game weeks, we sort of need this player to be kind of cheap to be able to afford Haaland on top of everyone else that we want to have, basically. So the drawback in this tactic, again, is the fact that you don't have 11 players for game 29. You have 2 players not playing. But at the same time, you have like the most essential players. You're going all out for West Ham, basically, against Aston Villa. You have the triple Spurs players. You have Doughty. You have decent players. You don't have any Brentford players, which is a drawback. But maybe Brentford will struggle against Burnley. Don't really know. It's hard to know, basically. We don't know if Mbeumo's back at this point. But I think a lot of these players are players that are going to be in most teams in game 29, and you're not missing out too much. You're missing out Tony, which is the big drawback. Maybe you can look to do Solanke to Tony and do like -4 swaps and stuff in the future, but I think Solanke is just a good player to have long term, so And also it makes it more difficult because Tony is more expensive than Solanke. But if you haven't done enough money in the bank, you could do Solanke to Tony as well in this game week. So you have a couple different options, but I also like to save the second transfer for game week 30 and 31, especially because that means you can get Haaland and Salah pretty easily back for 30 and 31. Because the one drawback, I think, if you're looking to wildcard earlier than game week 35, I think actually game week 27 and 28, or especially 27 with this tactic, is better than doing it in 30 and 31. Because I think, as you'll see, my team from game week 30 and 31 onwards with this tactic is still really, really strong. And yeah, just about as strong as it would be if you did wildcard in 30 or 31, basically. So yeah, let's move on to game week 30. 2 transfers still, but we only do the 1 transfer. That's Bowen to Salah in this game week. More than enough money in the bank to do that, regardless of what your team is looking like. Still a really good team for this game week. You're benching Gabriel and Saka. You could potentially bench boost in this game week instead if you want to, rather than game week 28. But yeah, I still think this is a really good squad. Obviously, you see the starting 11 whole matches for every single attacker this game week, which is looking really good. And we're still saving the 2 transfers for game week 31, most likely in this draft as well. Obviously, you would play Neto rather than Areola. I haven't perfectly done this like to the T, but yeah, you get the idea of how good of a team you could have potentially for this game week. Maybe you want to play Gabriel rather than Emerson as well. Probably would do that actually in this game week, but don't really pay attention too much to that. It's still a pretty strong team regardless, I think, regardless of who you play in this game week. Then game week 31, we have 2 free transfers, and I haven't done the transfers yet because I want to show you sort of how this works. Basically, we want Haaland back for this game week. Watkins against City away. Really tough fixture for him, so it makes sense to sell him, seeing as he doesn't have the best fixtures after this. Brentford at home is pretty nice, but then Arsenal away, really tough. And then they don't have any double game weeks, and they have some tough fixtures here as well. So Watkins out, Haaland in, makes sense. That means that you have 2.8 minus in the bank. You need to make up the 2.8 that you have basically in the bank, or to have enough money in the bank, basically. And the way to do that is selling Maddison. And the big positive of bench boosting in 28 is the fact that you can get in someone. You don't even have to worry about who you get in at this point for 5.1 or below. Yes, you could go with someone like Garnacho or potentially Decore if you have more money in the bank than me, who plays in game week 37 if you want to bench boost for that week. But I don't think it's that important, basically. I think this also sets you up better for the future. You can basically get someone who you can just stick on the bench for the foreseeable future. You can get someone like, trying to look him up now as I'm talking, get someone super cheap like McAtee from Sheffield United, basically, because you can just stash him on the bench, because you don't need to worry about your bench boost. You don't need to worry about selling McAtee and Doughty and all those players. So you have 37 perfect players, or you have 15 players that are perfect for your 37. So yeah, you can basically just save a lot of money and have a super good starting 11 for game week 31 onwards. Obviously, I haven't looked too much into the future for this draft in 32 and 33, for example, but 34, you would free hit again and get in all the double game week players for this game week. So that's a huge plus for this game week. You can get in the Newcastle players and Man United players that potentially double this game week. The Crystal Palace players, maybe Eze and Elise are back and firing on all cylinders at this point. You can get those guys in for game week 34 only, and then still have a really good game week or a really good team going forward, basically at this point. So as you can see, game week 31 onwards, you have Haaland, Solanke, Saka, Salah, Son, and Palmer. 6 really, really, really outstanding picks for the entirety of the season. You also still have Gabriel in defense. You have Udogie in defense, is pretty good. Senesi with pretty good fixtures. And then the bench is not the best, but at the same time, you don't really need to worry that much about your bench because you have so many transfers. You don't really need to worry about game week 37 and the bench boost in 37. You can just freely do as much as you like for these upcoming game weeks. You have 34 free hits where you can basically not worry about 34. You don't have to worry about 37, and you could just feel the best possible 11 for each game week from 31 until 38, and you end the season on a high, hopefully still with this tactic. So yeah, as you can see from 37, there are quite a lot of nice double game week fixtures here, as you can see. So maybe you want to bench boost, but still with this draft, for example, you have Avani, Doughty, and Emerson and Areola. Maybe not the best bench boosts. I don't know. It's up to you, basically, if you want to bench boost in 28 or 37. Maybe you want to make your team slightly less exciting for 28 and then still keep your bench boost for 37. But I sort of think it's like a freeing feeling to just use the bench boost in a decent game week and then not have to worry about having a good bench for the entirety of the season, basically. So that's basically my pitch for wildcarding this week. Especially if you have to, I think this is the best tactic. If you don't have to wildcard, you can still wait it out, especially if you have enough players to field a good 11 for game week 29. And then wildcard in 30 and 31. I still think it's a decent strategy, but at the same time, as I showed you with this team, like I mentioned with the players that I have, Saka, Palmer, Son, Salah, Haaland, and Solanke from game week 31 onwards, why would you need to wildcard in 31 anyway when you can maximize the potential you have in 27 and 28 and the whole season, basically? So I'm pretty torn about whether to do this tactic or if I'm going to stick the course with free hit 29 and wildcard 35. I'm going to have to look more into it, and I'm going to talk a lot more about it in the team selection video tomorrow. But I just wanted to put out this weekly wildcard draft now that we have at least every single blank in 29 confirmed, and also have a pretty good clear picture of what's going to happen in the future game weeks after that in 34 and 37 as well. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. Hopefully you got a bit inspired. Maybe you're inspired to do the wildcard. Maybe you're not inspired to do the wildcard. Maybe you are in a pretty good position for game 34 and stuff. I'm going to talk more about that in the team selection video, like I mentioned. But I hope you enjoyed the video. Give me a like if you enjoyed it yourself. Subscribe if you haven't already, which is a normal phrase that people say on YouTube. Subscribe if you're new around here, apparently some people say, or most people say. But yeah, subscribe whether you're new or old, whether it's your first video or your 100th video with me. Please subscribe if you haven't already. That's basically my final plea. Thank you for watching. As always, goodbye.